Dr. Jeremy, and there is also Dr. Jumana. We are going to be presenting today eating disorders prevention for teachers. We would like you just to know that what we will be sharing will be general information and guidelines. And this is part of the Middle East Eating Disorders Association efforts to raise awareness and also to spread the best guidelines of care. We know that the subject of eating disorders is a very complex one, and in our efforts in the Middle East, since resources and specialized services are scarce, but we are doing our best to make a difference. There are more and more eating disorders specialists coming in the region, which is a very positive thing, and we hope that this is going to continue, so that people who are suffering, families, and eating disorder sufferers themselves will get the best help and assistance. So today we're going to be going over this outline, and hopefully it will give you a lot of insight, knowledge, and hopefully also some guidelines that you can apply in your school as a teacher, so that you can reach out to the right specialists when or if necessary. So I'll start by discussing what eating disorders are. First of all, it is the deadliest of all mental health conditions, and it is something that is not something people do on purpose, but most of the time people do it without realizing or knowing what happens. Eating disorders always starts with a diet, and we will be expanding on that shortly. But not every diet will lead to an eating disorder. This is a very important difference. You will have biological, psychological, and emotional reasons for the development of an eating disorder. An eating disorder will usually be one in which a person becomes very much preoccupied with food, weight, and shape, as well as calories and diet. There's different forms, which we will be exploring in a moment, which these different obsessions and behaviors will often lead to changes in one's behavior, social avoidance, for example, depression, anxiety. And the most important thing is that when the relationship with food becomes a way to self-soothe, a way to comfort, a way to gain control, then that is the path towards developing an eating disorder. When eating stops being flexible is something that becomes a problem. Anorexia nervosa is one of the most known eating disorders. However, it's not the only one. Anorexia is there's a tremendous fear of food, fear of weight gain, food restriction, and starvation. We're obsessed with thinness. We have a distorted body image, and we are below what is a balanced weight or an optimal weight to us, and that creates a chain reaction of events. People with anorexia might also be over-exercising, and it's important to know that anorexia nervosa will affect people differently and present in a different way from one person to another. And so this is really important. Bulimia nervosa can also accompany anorexia. Sometimes bulimia nervosa can be on its own. Sometimes it can also be with anorexia. Sometimes you can suffer with multiple other type of eating disorders. They can also come and intertwine with each other. But bulimia is principally the act of eating very quickly, large amounts of foods, and then self-induced vomiting, which is purging. You might start with a strict diet, and then the diet slips. It's difficult. You might be confronted with a stressful situation. It might trigger you to think, oh, let me induce let me try to control the situation by purging. And the purging is going to create a whole chain of feelings and emotions that will create maybe shame and guilt and not feeling good, which was maybe is going to then lead me to restrict once again through strict dieting, and then I enter into a cycle which becomes very difficult to get out of on one's own, and it's known as the pinch purge cycle. You also have another type of eating disorder known as binge eating disorder. So similarly to bulimia, however, without the self-induced vomiting. It's you when you will find yourself eating large amounts of food in a very short time, even much more than is necessary. And usually this will be done to suppress or to manage difficult, overwhelming emotions that we are not aware of or we're finding difficult to acknowledge, and obviously we're not expressing properly. And through this behavior, we then feel terrible afterwards. We start feeling guilty, which makes us even more stressed because we regret the act of what we just did, and then we don't know how to self-soothe in a more constructive way, which then leads us to eat again large amounts of food, which again creates this whole mechanism in the body. The high that is created in the brain is actually going to result in making us feel better. And so physiologically, we just keep going back to the food whenever we are in such a cycle. Eating disorders are very widespread. Here are a few statistics that we have. The prevalence in the Middle East, unfortunately, we do not have a prevalence, but we know that it's growing in number every year due to many influences. We're not sure if it was prevalent as it is before. We're not sure if it is related to social media exposure. There's many different hypotheses and things that we assumptions that we have, but we do notice that clinically there's more and more cases. Eating disorders have the highest rate of mortality of any mental health illness, highest rates of suicide, either direct or as a result of complications of eating disorders, with anorexia being the most severe. What are the warning signs? There are warning signs that you can begin to observe even as teachers. You might begin to notice that the student weight is going down rapidly. You might notice that they're being tired all the time. They might lack concentration. Their mood might change as well. They might withdraw from other peers as well. Other things that they will experience, but might not know, is physical symptoms like menstrual periods, if this happens to be a girl. Otherwise, body checking will be frequent. They may be comparing their bodies with other people, feeling fat all the time. They might be wearing baggy clothes. Not everybody that wears baggy clothes, however, might develop eating disorders. So we have to be very careful and observant and knowledgeable about how this functions. We also have behavioral warnings. For example, they might start behaving differently around food. They might skip meals. They might eat less. Obviously, you can also probably notice from their body weight and their appearance how things are changing. They might be counting calories. They might feel very uneasy being with others that are eating as well, and socially around meal times. They're known to be cutting food. Again, you can be mindful of that if you're in a school, and you can observe, pay attention to students who might be behaving in such way. They can be doing it very discreetly, so sometimes it's difficult to know. But if you do observe these, that can be very helpful. They are also exercising a lot as well. That's also a sign. It's important to know that treatment for eating disorders requires specialists in eating disorders. So you have a team of people that are involved, not just psychologists, but psychologists that are specialized in eating disorders. That's important. Not just nutritionists or dietitians, but nutrition and dietitians that are specialized in eating disorders, a medical doctor who's knowledgeable about it, psychiatrist perhaps, and other specialists as well. This is a core team that's important in such a recovery. Every treatment has to be personalized as well. That's very important because not one eating disorder is the same. There's many other aspects to it. So Dr. Jumana is going to be telling us a little bit more about the next slide.
So I'm going to talk about eating. So what is eating and why do we eat? We need to remember that, I'm sorry, food is fuel. We need to try to make an analogy with cars. Cars need gas to function, and our gas is food with the nutrients, the carbohydrates, the sugar, and the energy that it gives. We need to be careful about listening and learn about listening to our body's messages of hunger, fullness, and the satisfaction cues. So hunger signals, for example, are the feelings and the sensations that the body sends that signals that the stomach is empty, the energy is low, and we need to fuel up. So many hormones are geared and secreted by the body, by different organs in the body, the brain, and to push us and invite us to eat. Signals, physical signals that we feel when we're hungry are dizziness, some stomach rumbling, headache, loss of concentration, irritability, etc. So we go and eat. We need, and it's important to know that regular eating is key, because just like the car needs to fill with gas regularly as soon as it's empty, the nutrients, once used by the cells, also create a need for another meal. So meals should happen every 3 to 4 hours, 3 meals a day at least, with 2 snacks are recommendable, and they need to include all different kinds of food groups. So restricting or cutting on one kind of food will create deficiencies in the body. So we need to have all the nutrients that the body needs to regenerate itself and take the energy needed. This is the food pyramid that most of you already know, that indicates, it's here more indicative for us. We put it more to remind everyone that every single kind of food is important for the body, and we need everything, including fat and fun food, which are the most scary foods usually. So all they are important for the body. Another way of looking at a balanced meal is this figure that will help us remember that really every kind and every food group is important. Vegetables are a very important part of the meals, but whole grains, carbohydrates, protein, and fat are very, very important too.
So in body weight, shall I take on from here, Jumana? So body weight, every human comes in different shape and size and weight. And we inherit a basic body type. It is also known as genetic set point. And this is something we inherit directly from our parents, like our eyes, our height, our shoe size, and so on. It's not something that we can actually change, but we can work on having the most optimal body within that type. And this is each one's optimal body weight. This is a picture to depict a little bit the genetic set point. You have people who have different sizes, different shapes, different colors. And of course, this is what human beings are. This is how we are. So why do we put on weight? Generally, the reason why is simply because it's going to be an energy imbalance. It also can be because of family genes that's going to cause us to do that. We know that from studies that there's an important relationship between gene type and what's happening. There can also and weight gain. Growth, also hormonal changes might be at the bottom of this, diseases, medication, even diets diets that we actually think, oh, I'm doing it because I want to lose weight, can actually in the long term create more weight gain than anything else. It can also be a dysregulation of emotional soothing, can also lead to weight because we're eating instead of managing and dealing with our emotions. So what is weight control? We need to understand that every body has a capacity to control and regulate its own weight around what we call a genetic set point. Without dieting or overeating, weight will stabilize. And this sounds difficult actually at first, but since we don't necessarily have the right information, generally we're going to react and overreact, not necessarily with the right information. And that's what's going to create a roller coaster of yo-yoing in our life. So it's really important to know that a physical body has the capacity to regulate itself if we're able to understand the way that it functions from the very beginning, so that we don't get into issues later on. Now we'll explore more in details in the next slides.
The diets and their dangers. How do diets work and what are diets? Diets, as you know, you will find zillions of different kinds online in magazines and doctors, dietitians, books, libraries, and they all promise you to have the perfect body, the thinnest body, and the best body. And actually, and unfortunately, all of them end up just like Jeremy was saying, when you go into this dieting experience, when you forget that your body will self-regulate and set around this genetic set point, you increase the predisposition of becoming overweight with diets, because the body doesn't know how to regulate anymore on its own. So what are diets? A diet is normally and logically speaking, a restriction in food, whether in quantity or in quality. So going on a diet is to reduce the amount of food or the richness, some rich or high in caloric food. One of the most common effect of diet, when you reduce the quantity, it's logical that you will get hungry. And usually what happens is when patients are, or clients or people are going on a diet and they restrict a little more or they skip meals, they end up at the end of the day getting very hungry. So this picture here will is showing a dialogue between two people asking about the regimen of their diet. So the boy answers, well, I eat an apple for breakfast and an egg for lunch. And then, what do you eat for dinner? And then the boy responds, I eat half of the refrigerator. So this is exactly, unfortunately, what happens when restriction is very severe. We end up very hungry and backfiring on our goal, which is lose weight. We end up putting on weight instead. The other very common effect of diet is craving. When you restrict in the quality or some or cut down completely on certain food groups, you start craving them, and the brain starts focusing and obsessing about these foods that you forbid yourself. And you see here a beautiful picture that Jeremy found, a brain filled with cakes and desserts and beers and everything that we usually cut down on a diet. So this is how the brain functions. When you crave, when you forbid yourself of something, you crave it, and you also end up overeating it at the end of the road. So this is the other bad side effect of diet. And this is how they work. You start on restricting, so the body interprets this restriction as famine. You lose weight in the beginning, but you also lose muscle mass. This is something that people do not realize. They think that when they're on a diet, they will only lose fat. We actually lose water and muscle mass along with the fat. And when muscle mass is lost, the metabolic rate decreases, and you need less food to maintain this body weight or to even go lower on your body weight. So we end up eating less to maintain this lower body weight, but at the end, we are unable to sustain this very low food intake, and we end up craving and overeating and putting on weight again. So these are the downfalls of diets. And finally, the worst effect of diets are the evolution. Of course, not everyone will suffer from an eating disorder after a diet, but we need to remember that every eating disorder starts with a diet. This mentality, this culture of diet, of restriction, ends in an obsession with food, weight, and calorie control. And how are eating disorders triggered? It's this seek of controlling food, of restricting too much and over-exercising, and sometimes people would even try to get dangerous and ineffective methods to lose weight with medication or laxative diuretics, etc. And this constant obsession of losing weight will end in the obsession and the eating disorder, which is a psychological disease that is more controlled in the brain, uncontrolled actually, but it comes from the brain. This incapacity of dealing with better food intake and normal balanced food intake. Body image.
So in terms of body image, of course, this has a really important role to play. And of course, we're going to just delve into what body image is. So what is it? It's something that starts very early on in life. And of course, the way that our parents are with us and how close they are to us and how responsive perhaps they are to our needs can definitely help or affect in one way or another. So body image has to do with our thoughts, our perceptions and feelings and actions towards one's body, the evaluation of physical attractiveness, and the emotions associated with body shape and size. Having a poor body image or a negative body image comes from dissatisfaction or negative feelings towards our body, often regarding weight and size. This is what body image is, and how does it impact really can be very difficult. Body image affects our self-esteem, our sense of self-worth, self-love, and this will often be associated with changes in our mood, being depressed, being anxious, and having a negative body image, poor sense of self is one of the factors leading to eating disorders. So building a good body image is a critical aspect of children's development as they start looking and discovering their body parts from the age of 3. So the most vulnerable time will be that of adolescence. This transition from child to adulthood can be experienced in a very difficult way for some of us. So in terms of, this is a quote here, your body image is stored in your brain cells, not in your fat cells. So this is something we can learn to challenge, learn to rethink how we view ourselves in the world. And our role as parents is something that is very, very key in that, but not only parents, also teachers and everybody around the growth of the child.
Yeah, absolutely. Remember that it's a perception. Body image is really a perception of the image, of our own body image, and not the real, not always real as like the volume of our fat cells.
So here, Jumana, would you like to just say a little bit more about this study here?
tell you about this study that was done at Harvard Medical School that showed that mothers' concerns and usually adults' concerns around, but this study was done with mothers. The worrying too much about their weight and sharing these worries and struggle of their own weight in front of their children or adolescents have a huge impact on the children and adolescent, and it triggers their own attention to their body and their own self hatred or dissatisfaction with their own bodies. So this is something that we need to pay attention to. Adults, parents, teachers around, pay attention to what you say, to what you talk, and how you mention your body in front of the kids or adolescents, because keep in mind that they start realizing and looking at their bodies at a very, very early age. So words like I'm skipping dinner tonight, I'm not eating breakfast anymore, I'm trying to go on a diet, I can't stand myself, I feel ugly, I am fat, all these words and comments are very powerful and will trigger the self dissatisfaction of each of these young people around us.
So the subject of social pressures and body shaming is a very important component, not only something we see with people who are struggling with eating disorders, but also is one of the causes of developing of one of the factors that can lead towards reinforcing that eating disorder condition. So yes, Shumana.
So media, images, billboards, all showing very thin men or women, very healthy, very muscle with their six packs, etc., will impress and also trigger self body dissatisfaction in young and people around us. And we think it will. That ideally we should look like these pictures. And in schools, among the family, we need to pay attention to weight stigma and food also, and body weights also, not to trigger this desire and this obsession with body weight loss, which will at some point might trigger eating disorders. So pay attention to what we say in front of kids, avoid stigma, and remember also when I see this picture about the evolution of beauty through the ages. When you look at paintings from far in the 19th century, you will see always women that are fat, usually, that have big thighs and big tummies. And this was the definition of beauty, while with age, these new ideals became thinness and models that are really very, very thin and underweight. Toys and TV programs also feature usually very thin people, and that can impact also the kids in a very bad manner, thinking that their ideals and their heroes should be thin. So this is the meaning of beauty and happiness and thinness. Media, you should teach children at schools and at home that all medias are manipulated and photoshopped, and you need to pay them attention to always keep a critical idea about all these very thin models that they feature. So as a result of all this social pressure, we need to remember that all this will result in diet and people looking and trying to lose weight and decrease their body weight that might be there and suffering from a very young age. You see here in numbers that most of young people, half of 6 to 12-year-old, are dissatisfied with their bodies. And all this is coming from this social media and talks about self dissatisfaction and self-body. 42% of first to third grade girls want to be thinner. 80% of surveyed 10-year-old girls say they are more afraid of getting fat than getting cancer. This is absolutely unbearable and unbelievable. 2/3 of 18 to 25 years old, so these are adolescents that are may eventually more mature, would rather be mean or stupid than fat. So fatness became the significant, the sign of horror, and everyone wants to get thinner and go on a diet. So we need to teach kids to refuse this social pressure, to accept our bodies like they are and work around it without going on diets and endless dream of getting thinner. Try not to compare with other bodies because everybody is different. We come from different family genes, and everyone will be different. We need to stop the checking behavior, the clothing checking, and because all these will affect eventually self-esteem.
So here we'll be talking about giving guidance and guidelines for teachers that you can implement in schools to help in early recognition. So we need to know that eating disorders are most successfully treated when they are discovered early. And it's crucial for each of you teachers to have some knowledge and understanding of eating disorders that will help to identify the symptoms so that we can then take the necessary measures. And if for whatever reason you are noticing or have suspicions of some behaviors and some concerns, which may or may not be, it's always good to have a clear protocol in school so that you can reach out to the school counselor or the nurse and take the necessary steps to make other observations or contact the parents and so on, or maybe even get in touch with an eating disorder specialist. Prevention is the key. Schools have an incredible role in preventing eating disorders. In the Middle East, we do our best to raise awareness in schools, which is what we've been doing since Middle East, since MEDA has been founded back in 2009. And we're here to educate and to spread awareness on this. It's important to promote and educate sound nutritional principles to everybody involved in the school, as well as create opportunities for emotional intelligence education, learning about stress, learning how to cope. All of this is really important. We also have here, which I'll read through, the CDC guidelines for school health programs promoting lifelong healthy eating. It states that school-based nutrition education programs are most likely to be effective when they help the young people learn skills and not just get them facts. So there's nothing more powerful than teaching behaviors that are hands-on as opposed to just reading something. So we would also like to be giving students chances to practice this healthier eating, and that's something that we can be doing within the school setting. Of course, if there's a proper procedure and guidelines in place. Make nutritional education activities fun, and let everybody involved in this. So involve teachers, administrators, families, community leaders, and students in delivering a strong message about balanced eating as part of coordinated school health program. Not only on nutrition, we also want to be focusing on emotional intelligence and developing improved ways of dealing with stress, understand one's body, how our body changes, our sense of self, to develop effective communication skills and learn various stress management techniques, mindfulness practices. We know that in schools that actually practice meditation, this actually creates such an environment that is much better and even calmer, and the students become even more productive. So we also have a message here, very important for physical education teachers. We want to be alert for signs of eating disorders in students, boys and girls who participate in sports, because they are, especially if they are encouraged to do diets, they are at special risk for developing an eating disorders. So we have quite a few who are often told to go on a diet. We want to be wary and careful of that. Not just say it like that. We need to get to know who we're actually giving this message to. Any strict weight loss is discouraged, and any students on an athletic path would require a proper plan suitable to their condition. Particular requirements is important. So coaches must be advised and must advise students of the dangers of over-exercising and the need for the body to rest, to repair tissue, and restore glycogen levels for better performance. Finally, promote wellness and not thinness in your school. These are big questions. We invite all our schools in the Middle East to really be wary of. Does your school and teachers recognize and address, for example, size discrimination, teach and model sound nutrition, exercise principles, recognize and provide counseling to students under stress, remove barriers to physical activities, know how to recognize and approach students with eating disorders, provide various food choices in the cafeteria, vending machines, or other events at school, promote student self-esteem and support networks. This is something that having a school counselor is important. Their role is critical, not only for eating disorders, but for so many other emotional issues. They're there to help guide and steer a school so that it can promote wellness in a way that will promote a more optimal growth, self-accepting, an improved body image, self-sustaining, and human who will have an improved sense of self. So we're all responsible in this, and we help schools in that respect through our raising awareness campaigns and activities that we do for this. So hopefully you're going to find this recording very useful and insightful. And the key thing to remember is that everybody is different. We have to learn to accept our body differences, learn to accept that, and to also to know when to turn to for help. There are lots of specialists available. MIDA, this is what we stand for, is to really help guide you in this process that can sometimes be very difficult. So let's be aware of this. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate. Of course, this doesn't replace the details or something more personalized that you might need. Hopefully you found what we've shared today very useful and beneficial for you. So we wish you all well. Thank you. And
I would like to add here that because we are talking about teachers and schools, you are the mostly in this environment of young adolescents where eating disorders starts usually. So your attention, your care, your knowledge is very, 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 very important, and avoiding and teaching kids about weight stigma, because all these negative comments usually come among adolescents, and you need to teach them to refrain from commenting on others' bodies. And thank you for what you would be doing also to prevent eating disorders at schools.
thank you.